Hey folks, today I would like to talk about Donald Trump and the prognosis for the balance of 2024, spring, summer, fall, election, and so on. So before I get into that, I'll just clue you into one thing that happened a couple of weeks ago. I was a guest on a webinar panel discussing the 2024 elections. This was hosted by Maurice Fernandez, and along with myself as the representative for Vedic astrology, there was, Morris, evolutionary astrology, Onur Doser from Turkey, speaking from the perspective of traditional astrology, and Roy Gillett from the UK, on sort of a broad coverage of astrology. So we all had something to say about, the current Republican nominee candidates, and also, on the Democrat side, and what the, face off into the fall election was likely to look like. So that's up on YouTube on Morris Fernandez YouTube channel, and I will post a visual graphic at the end of my post here, so that if you're interested, you can go to his website and hear what we all had to say about that. So, but I spread my coverage among, many of the Republican nominees, and didn't talk at length about Trump, and I'd like to do that a little more at this time. So, as we know, Trump is coming hot off two successful caucuses in the process for selection of the Republican presidential nominee. In Iowa, he had 51%, DeSantis 21, Nikki Haley 19, and Vivek Ramaswamy 8%. I think it was just the day after that DeSantis dropped out, and Ramaswamy also dropped out, and both, declared their allegiance to Trump. Nikki Haley stuck in and went on to compete against Trump in the New Hampshire caucus. Now, if there's anything that a misogynist hates, it's a woman who won't sit down and shut up when he asks her to. So, points for Nikki Haley for sticking with it. And although she had hoped to win in New Hampshire, she didn't. Trump took 54% of the vote and she got 43. But that is very respectable. And I think it's, given a lot of people cause for hope. And also for perhaps some doubt about Trump as well, too, that she does have quite a strong contender in Nikki Haley. Now, he's gone on since then to say, anyone who contributes to the Nikki Haley campaign is going to be, banished from MAGA world because they don't want them anymore. So I don't think that's going to put many people off their game of providing some financial support for Haley, even if she is a long shot, just to keep her in the game for a while. Because as the year unfolds, there's a lot of stuff happening. I mean, Trump has got 91 indictments, technically 4 indictments and 91 criminal charges against him. So there's really a lot of court cases that are coming up over the spring and summer. And as these cases go to trial, much of what transpires is going to become public knowledge in a way that it never was before. And it's going to start to affect the judgment of many, stalwart Republicans and a lot of others who, hanging on the edge. Of the 40-some people that worked in the Trump administration, 2016 to 2020, very, very few of them are still endorsing him. And many say that, he's unfit or dangerous or both. Sort of stalwart Republicans like Chris Christie and Mitt Romney and Liz Cheney, for instance, are all, outspoken about the need to have a better candidate. So I want to address, from the astrological point of view, what's going on with respect to Trump and what we might expect over these next 6 to 9 months. Okay, so here's the horoscope for Donald Trump in my preferred format. South Indian on the left, North Indian on the right, the one that I work with and will direct your attention to. So Donald Trump, born 14th of June, 1946, 10:54 in the morning in New York. So Donald Trump has a Kala Sarpa configuration in his horoscope. I mean, that is a type 4. So Rahu Ketu split the horoscope in two. All the planets are found on one half of the horoscope, and the other half of the horoscope is unpopulated. Technically, the moon is just beyond the degree line of the Rahu Ketu axis, but it remains within Scorpio, so it's still a valid form of Kalasarpa, albeit, as I say, type 4, the most common of the Kalasarpa configurations. Now, one great peculiarity about Trump is that he was born under a lunatic eclipse. Yeah, that's a slip of the tongue and a pun at the same time, but, it's a lunar eclipse, but it's had peculiar, results in his case. Now, Trump doesn't have a lot of yogas in his horoscope, very few that are notable. The most dominant of them, though, is Lagnesh Sun in the 10th house, associated with Rahu, which acts as a proxy for 10th Lord Venus. So, in your mind's eye, it's as if Sun and Venus were together. First Lord, 10th Lord together. That forms one of the Dharma Karma Adipati yogas, commonly referred to as a Raja Yoga. No buts about it. It's a Dharma Karma Adipati Yoga. So that's one source of power in his horoscope. Now, the Rahu Ketu axis is dominant in this horoscope because it affects both the sun and the moon. This is a lunar eclipse, so the moon gets eclipsed. He was born within mere hours of that eclipse. Ketu acts very strongly on behalf of Mars because not only does Mars aspect Ketu, but Mars also disposits Ketu. So the net result of all this is that there's a lot of anger and grievance in Donald Trump. First and foremost, let's note that, Sun and Mars are both what we call Kshatriya caste planets. So in the Hindu, paradigm of society, the Kshatriya caste, are the rulers and administrators. In the old days, that would be the king, his commander-in-chief. In modern times, it's presidents and prime ministers and, high officers of the government and military people. And in mundane society, it cascades down through CEOs, directors, managers, leaders of every kind. The basic notion of the Kshatriya caste is a command and control disposition. The personality is eager to wield that kind of power. And we see this in Trump constantly. So Sun and Mars, because they are angular, this is what drives it. Now, Ketu very much acts like Mars as well. I mean, Ketu is even Mars-like, even without this powerful influence from Mars specifically in this horoscope. And so there's a very strong martial influence upon the moon. And the moon, of course, represents mood, personality, outwardly observable behaviors, all that sort of stuff. So, Trump is constantly fuming and eager to, come to grips with somebody or other. He's always chastising or criticizing or ridiculing somebody. He's always in attack mode. This is his, perpetual state of behavior. Interestingly enough, too, and if you look through his horoscope, you'll see that the Sun is in a Mars nakshatra, Jupiter's in a Mars nakshatra, and Rahu's in a Mars nakshatra. So during the dashas or bhuktis of any of these three, you will effectively get Mars being exhibited. Because under the principle of Nadi astrology or Krishnamurti Padati, it's said that, when a period lord runs, whether dasha or bhukti, it will first and foremost give the results of its nakshatra dispositor. So out of the 9 navagrahas, 3 of them are in Mars nakshatras. So that means like 1/3 of the time, Trump is acting out the martial sort of attitudes. And admittedly, that may have some skills for, some significations for command and control, boldness, aggressiveness, but also, vindictiveness, injury, bullying attitude. And, this is very, very evident within the Republican world currently. So let's have a look at Dasha Bhuktis. No, so currently Trump is in Jupiter Dasha, and that gives the results of Mars. Jupiter is respectably placed here in the horoscope. It's got strengths. It owns the fifth. It owns the eighth. But it gives results for Mars, and this Mars is quite strong here. Because it owns fourth and ninth and occupies the first. And it has, quite a dominant influence via Sambandha over both Ketu and the moon, which, is sometimes representative of his sometimes unhinged behaviors, mostly centering around, forcing himself on others in one context or another, or his grievances against a long litany of people who offend him. Now, since last September, Trump has been in a let me verify. He's been in a Ketu Bhukti. So running Jupiter Dasha Ketu Bhukti. Ketu Bhukti since last October 2023. That Ketu Bhukti will run up until late September of 2024, and then it'll switch to Venus Bhukti. So let's just have a look at what's going on during the Venus Bhukti. As I've alluded, Ketu is operant, and Ketu, the nodes always act as proxies for the planets with which they are A, associated, B, aspected by, or C, disposited by rashi or nakshatra. So in Trump's instance, Ketu is going to give results for the moon. This is a eclipsed moon, a full moon, a debilitated moon, and an eclipsed moon. Also under affliction as well too. Afflicted by Mars, afflicted by Sun. So Ketu will give those results. And so I'm going to get a lot of this sort of a bit of crazy behavior because of the moon's hyperactivity in this particular horoscope. Now Ketu is also going to give results for Mars, which both aspects it and disposits it. So you're going to see through this period, October 2023 to September of 2024, a lot of this aggressiveness and pounding the table and making threats. I mean, he's threatening contributors to, financial contributors to Nikki Haley's campaign with banishment. He's all but threatening, the Supreme Court with civil, violence if they don't, judge him appropriately, in these issues that are going to the court about whether Arizona or Maine can strike him from the ballot. So there's going to be a lot of this heavy-handedness and threatening behavior. I mean, it's already been there for several years, but it's going to get even more aggravated in this next year. So on and on it goes with that. Now, there's no other influences that Ketu really summons up except those of Moon and Mars. And it's a bit of the angry person syndrome that's going to be manifested. What happens after that? Well, then we're going to go to Venus Bhukti. Now, if you look at Venus in the horoscope, it is the 10th Lord, which is a significator of status, high position, reputation, role in the world. And what's happened to it? It's gone to the 12th house, a Trikashtana. That's not a good placement. That's a bad placement. Furthermore, it is afflicted by its association with Saturn, the prime malefic. So none of that is good. So I expect that by September of 2024, the wheels will have come off the cart of the Trump train, and things are going to be slipping and sliding and falling apart. So, what form will that take? Well, the Venus as Lord of the Tenth, I mean, his reputation is going to be, I think, severely tarnished. The more these various cases go to court, whether it's the Georgia interference case, well, let's just look at the cases that are on right now. There's the civil trial in New York where he's already been declared a business fraud, and now they're just determining, the extent of penalties, anywhere from 250 to $370 million. They're also talking about barring him from business activities in New York for an indeterminate period, along with both of his sons. There's financial penalties there. With the Jean Carroll sexual assault case, basically he's been found guilty. He since called her a liar. She's sued him for defamation. I think the figure is something like $10 million. And he's still fighting that one, and maybe aggravating and even worse than that. That fine might be upped. So there's more penalties to be paid there too. What will begin to sink into people's minds is that this fellow has been convicted for sexual assault and of business fraud, both of those. Now, even among stalwart Republicans, a lot of people are starting to say, well, this is not a good look for a potential president. This will continue to sink in and will affect voters, and it'll affect donors. What else may go wrong with this? Well, for a different perspective, I would like to shift now to the analysis of two amshas. The D10, the Dashamsha, which is reflective of social status, and also the D11, the Ekadashamsha, which is reflective of significant awards or demerits and financial consequences for either of those. So without further ado, let me go to that. Okay, so here I've just changed the layout of the page. I've put the Rashi Kundali on the left-hand side, removed my talking head, and on the right side, I've shown the D10, the Dashamsha for Trump's horoscope. There's no degrees in that because that's just a frivolous, addition that software makes available, but we don't actually do that because it's useless. So what do we want to look at here? Trump is in Jupiter Dasha and K2 Bhukti as we speak. So, this brief analysis I'm going to conduct comes courtesy of Hart Defoe's application of principles of Amsha Vichara as originated and espoused by the late and great astrologer mathematician Sheshadri Iyer, who did a great amount of work with Amshas and introduced some very innovative concepts, which Hart, over many thousands of clients, honed the application of this technique and taught it to so many of us in the era when he was doing a lot of courses. So here's the rationale. Jupiter Dasha. So we like to see a dasha or a bhukti lord, any period lord, in a positive house. That's a good thing. So Jupiter here is in a Kendra. That's a positive house. That is good. However, we got to look at its condition as well too. I mean, it's retrograde. That carries a strength, but it's also debilitated. That's not good. However, there is a Parivartana yoga here between Jupiter and Saturn. In your mind's eye, now you can flip these and see Jupiter in the 6th house and Saturn in the 4th. However, when we do that, although Jupiter, takes residence in its own sign, Pisces, in that, sort of virtual sign exchange, it ends up in the 6th house, which is a Trikashtana, and that's not a good thing. So it's very much a mixed bag, this Jupiter, the Parivartana yoga that it can engage in, because it's either debilitated here or it goes to its own sign and it ends up in the sixth house, where, it enjoys the company of an exalted Venus, but it also gets an affliction from Mars as well too. Now, so mixed bag for Jupiter Dasha. Then we go to Ketu Bhukti. So Ketu here sits in the seventh house. It's a Kendra. That's a positive thing. But Ketu is in an axis, of course, with Rahu, Ketu, and the Sun and the Moon. So this is sort of a mixed yoga of malefics and benefics. But problematic among these is the Sun, which is debilitated, which to some degree contaminates this Ketu and creates problems of a sort. Furthermore, though, we need to look at Ketu's dispositor, and that is Mars, and that Mars occupies the Trikashtana, and that is a negative quality as well. Now, that Mars also aspects Ketu, so Ketu is in effect afflicted by the aspect of a debilitated Sun and also afflicted by Mars as well too. Now, Mars itself as a dispositor is in a parivartana with Mercury, so it can change out of the 12th house too. And again, that's a bit of a mixed bag, and I realize this is kind of murky, but this shows the way the Ketu Bhukti will go for him. There's some success, there's some failure, there's some headwinds, there's some tailwinds. And we continue to see this almost every month, where one thing after another is coming out, in terms of bad news for him, whether it's, the progression of various court cases or other evidence coming forward, and yet he continues to enjoy the support of MAGA World and even those other politicians, in the Republican Party that continue to support him. So it's as I say, a mixed bag. However, come to Venus Bhukti, what might happen there? Well, okay, Venus does occupy Trikashtana, the sixth house. Now, Venus is exalted, and that's certainly a bonus, but what overrides that is the fact that it's in a Trikashtana. Furthermore, in that Trikashtana, it is afflicted by the association of Saturn and the aspect of Mars. So Venus in Trikashtana afflicted by two malefics, albeit with, it has exaltation on its side. And if you indulge in the parivartana between Jupiter and Saturn, you'll get Jupiter there with Venus as well too. But Venus is in a Trikashtana. Now notice some parallel developments. In the rashi, Ketu is Kendra. In the rashi, Venus is in a Trikashtana. Why am I referring again and again to Ketu and Venus? These are the current Bhukti and the next Bhukti. So over here, Ketu in a Kendra, Venus in a Trikashtana, and in this Amsha, Ketu in a Kendra, Venus in a Trikashtana. Now let's so keep in mind D10 reflects, it's labeled here in this software, great successes. But it usually means, sort of social honors, reputation, status of some kind, professional success. It's all about that. Now let's take a different perspective by looking at the D11. Find that here, Shishadri Iyer's D11. It's called conveyances. Whoops, I got the wrong one. Let me go back and find that. Here it is here. It's right next door to it. Okay, D11, it's called cure, don't ask me why. But Shishadri Iyer used it this way, and Hart Defoe continued to use it and prove its usefulness in this regard. The D11 can be used to examine a person's prospects for high honors or, miserable failures, great success or great disappointment. It can be used as a litmus test for political contests. It can also be used for more mundane things. For instance, candidates for Academy Awards or candidates for Nobel Prizes. Great honors of one kind or another, and sometimes ascendant to, high office or high regard among, one's peers in society. So it's a bit like the D10, but, sort of with some cream on top. Furthermore, it's got financial ramifications as well too. So just take the example of somebody who wins an Academy Award or somebody who wins a Nobel Prize. With the latter, it immediately comes with prize money. With Academy Awards, it's almost immediately followed by, offers to, you know, star in other films and other productions. And so it's a moneymaker no matter what. So it can be used as a gauge for great success in that regard, but also in significant stock market plays, but also significant losses as well too. Great loss of face in the public arena, or great loss of monies, in a mundane way. So that's what we're using the D11 for. Now, again, quickly, we're going to do a similar thing, focusing on the current dasha for Trump. Current bukti for Trump. Well, I'll talk about the dasha as well too, and the current bukti and the next bukti. So current dasha for Trump is Jupiter, and it's well placed in a Kendra. No other planet affects it, so that's all pretty good. Within the Jupiter dasha, we have Ketu bukti. So in this instance, we look at K2 and we say, okay, it's in a trikona, that's well placed. It's with the moon, that's a benefic, okay, that's good. But now look at this. It's in the company of the sun, one malefic. It's aspected by Saturn, another malefic. It's aspected by Mars, yet another malefic. And of course, in the D11 layout, there's a peculiarity where Rahu and Ketu always appear together. So in this case, we've got Ketu afflicted by every malefic in the horoscope in this particular Amsha. So although Ketu is in a trikona, and that generally promises, relatively good times, the afflictions are, very, very significant. And so this might indicate, you got a bit of a tailwind, but there's an incredible amount of turbulence going with all these malefics weighing in. And, this is representative of, the many court cases that he's got going, and the criticism that's going to cause, not only among the general voter public, but also among Republicans themselves. So with respect to Rahu Ketu, we always have to take a verifying look at their dispositor as well. So we look at Ketu in Gemini, its dispositor is Mercury. It's in the 10th house. That's a good thing. There are no influences whatsoever from any other graha upon it. So that's a little bit of a saving grace, and it might mean that, the skills, that he has to bring to bear with respect to Mercury are going to come into play. Mercury in his natal chart is very powerful. I mean, it's Swarashi in Gemini. It occupies the 11th house of income. It also rules the second house of net worth, where, a strong Jupiter is placed as well, too. So Trump continues to be a moneymaker, throughout all his difficulties. He's continues to draw down very significant contributions from, millions of his supporters. And he's a negotiator. And I think as, storm clouds begin to darken over him, if he sees the writing on the wall, which I think is coming, he's going to have to use his negotiating skills to get himself out of the very, dark little corner he's now been captured in. So what happens after Ketu Bhukti? Then comes Venus Bhukti. So in the scheme of Amsha Vichara, which is Iyer's methodology, he treats the third house. In the Rashi, we will often refer to the third house as a mild dushtana. In the Amshas, the third house is regarded as being every bit as bad as the Trikashtanas 6, 8, and 12. So any planet located in the third is in a negative house, pure and simple, just as bad as 6, 8, or 12. So here, the Venus Bhukti finds this Venus in the third house. That's a negative house, and it spells trouble. What about influences upon it? Well, it's associated with Saturn. That's a malefic. It does receive the aspect of Jupiter. That's a benefic. But the kicker here is that it's associated with Saturn, the worst malefic, and that Saturn is debilitated. And that causes significant contamination for this Venus. So it's already poorly placed in the third house, which is treated as a full-blown Dashtana here. And it's in the company of the prime malefic. And that prime malefic is debilitated, which makes it even more unpredictable and roguish in its capacity to cause harm. And so this Venus Bhukti, I think, is going to be very problematic. So, sometimes the results of Bhuktis come on, a month before their actual technical start date. So I'm thinking that over the course of this year, there is going to be a foreshadowing. I mean, as I went through these two amshas, the D10 and D11, we saw a very mixed bag of circumstances for K2. And as that unfolds, it's going to foreshadow even greater difficulties for the Venus Bhukti, which, I'll repeat, starts late September, which is literally just a month and a bit before the November presidential elections. I think by that time, things are going to be looking, pretty crappy for Trump's prospects for winning, an election, even if he's going to stay in the race. So it's worthy of note that, before I leave this entirely, back to the rashi, there is a solar eclipse in April 8th, where sun and moon are almost directly opposite, and of course the nodal axis is there as well too, directly opposite Jupiter, which I think is going to have the effect of causing him financial harm to some degree, because it's affecting this axis here. My money, second house, their money, that is donors' money, eighth house, with the solar eclipse occurring in that eighth, being directly opposite that Jupiter, which owns the 12th, not the 12th house, the eighth house. And at the same time, there'll be a Mars-Saturn conjunction forming in the seventh house, pretty much directly opposite the natal Mars. Now, I think what that means is opposition coming out of the woodwork, contrarian voices who are saying maybe this is not the right guy for this campaign. Do we have something better? And that's why I think it's good for Nikki Haley to stay in the race, even if she doesn't win as many caucuses as Trump does. She's still an excellent battle plan for a Trump a Trump party, for a Republican Party who's put all its money on Trump. Well, as we'll see, not everyone's putting their money on Trump, so they're hedging their bets perhaps. So there we have it. I believe that over the course of the spring and summer, things are going to get worse and worse for Trump, such that by the time let's say Labor Day comes around, the writing is on the wall, and this guy is going to look more and more like a loser. Okay, so just a bit of a wrap up here, and thank you for your patience in going through, a post that is, relatively technical with regard to the proper application of the amshas in Dasha Bhukti analysis. So the takeaway from this quick review of the current Bhukti, Ketu for Trump, and the next Bhukti, Venus, is this. In the Rashi, Ketu is in a Kendra. In the D10, Ketu was in a Kendra. In the D11, Ketu was in a Trikona. But for Venus, in the Rashi of Trump's horoscope, Venus is in the 12th house, a Trikashtana. In the D10, Venus is in the 6th house, a Trikashtana. In the D11, Venus is in the 3rd house, a Dashtana, fully as problematic and negative as the Trikashtanas. So there is definitely a change of seasons afoot, which is going to, it's when a storm is approaching, you're out there having a picnic and it's a pretty nice day, and then the wind starts to blow and it's, flipping things around, and then you can see clouds on the horizon, and the wind's getting stronger, and you start to feel the first drops of rain as the clouds gather over you, and now it's really dark and you hear thunder. And now you begin to wonder, why did we come out today on this picnic? So, things don't happen instantly, but over the course of the spring and summer, we're going to see the storm clouds gathering, and they're coming. For Trump, I think, in this regard. By Labor Day, it's going to be looking like no picnic anymore. Okay, so that's the summation of my prognosis for Trump in the balance of 2024. I'm going to leave a visual up at the end of this post for Morris Fernandez YouTube channel. And for those who are interested, there's not just my perspective, the Vedic perspective in that particular webinar of panelists, but there's 3 Western astrologers there giving you their points of view if you're interested in that. Okay, thanks for hanging in. Hope to see you again. Please subscribe. Please tell your friends. Thank you. Bye for now.